In my last screencast, I showed you how to make your crab eat worms. Now in this screencast, I'll show you how to keep score, or keep track of how many worms your crab eats. So to do this, we need to create a new class, a new actor class. So we're going to right click on actor and we're create a new class called a label. Now this label doesn't need an image, it's just going to be text. It's just going to be words on your screen. So we create that and we double click here and we need to edit some code. Normally when we code, all we really do is kind of code between these two curly braces here. For this to work, we need to actually import another part of the Java code. So we're going to import. So up here we're going to write import java.awt dot and then an asterisk and semicolon. And this is basically to use colors. So I'm going to write a little comment up there that says colors, so I remind myself how to do this. Now my suggestion to you is to create this label class in a text document also, because we tend to use this class over and over and over again in all our games. So you really shouldn't have to write it over and over again. The other thing that's a little different is this class doesn't need an act method. So we're actually going to just delete it. We're not really going to use it. So we can just delete it like that. So here, in between the two curly braces for the green and the green, we're going to write our first method. We're actually going to write, I just made a mistake, we're going to write a constructor, not a method. So we're going to write public label. And our label needs string text. And what this means is when we create a label, it needs some text, or a string of text. Now, inside of our constructor, we're going to just create a green foot image. So we're going to write green foot image called img, and that's going to be a new green foot image. It's going to be the length of our text times 20. So if our text has 5 letters, it's going to be 100 pixels long. All right, and then it's going to be, right now we're going to set it at 30 pixels tall. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to change the image and we're going to set the color. So our color here, I'm going to set it to is probably black. If you don't import java.awt, you can't use the color here. That's why we're doing that. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to draw the image. So we're going to draw the string, which is the text. We're going to draw the text and write some coordinates in there. And then we're going to set the image, put it on the screen basically. That's our constructor, so that happens every time we make a new label. And then what we need to do is make one more method, public void set text. And again, we need string text for this to work. So again, it kind of makes sense your label needs some text to make it. So we go green foot image img equals get image. So now we're actually going to get the text off the screen, or get the picture off the screen. We're going to clear it, and then we're going to draw it again. Just like that. And if we compile it, we should have no errors, and we're good. Now this method here, or this class here, we actually don't really drag this on the screen at all. The best way to put one in your world is to actually go to the world. And because we want to update this all the time, it doesn't make sense to make your label here. It doesn't make sense to make it in the prepare. So above your constructor up here, what we're going to do is we're going to create a new label. So we're going to write label. I like to call it scoreboard. And that equals a new label. And then in parentheses and quotes, we're going to write what we want it to say. And actually, let's change it to worms 0. So what this does is it makes a scoreboard that's a new label that's going to say worms equals 0. Now I can add it to my world. So I'm going to write add object right here, and I'm going to call it scoreboard. It has to be the name that's up here. Has to, or it doesn't work. And I'm going to put it at, I don't know, 200, 200, just so I can make sure I know where it is. If I compile it, oh, it's not a method, no parentheses. If I compile it, and now that I fixed that error, and I close my world, see where it says worms right there, and it says 0. If I run my game, my scoreboard, we want it to count up, but when I hit worms, it doesn't count up yet. We haven't added that code. The scoreboard is in our world, so we need to change that code a little bit in the world and in the crab. So we'll go to the crab first, and what we need in here is we need to come inside this first curly brace here, and we need to create a field or a variable. So we're going to create a public static integer. Static is important here, called score. We're going to make that equal to 0. And our score should go up every time the crab eats a worm. So I come down to our eat worms method. I'm going to add a curly brace under this if statement so I can do more than one line of code at a time. And I'm going to write score equals score plus 1. So the score goes up every time I eat a worm. Also, what's a little bit cool, I'm going to show you a cool trick here, is when you're writing a lot of code, your curly braces might not line up. So if you press Control-Shift-I on your keyboard, Greenfoot cleans that all up for you. That's a nice little trick. Now, this static is really important because that means we can use this score in other objects. So we're going to compile this. We have no errors. We want our scoreboard to update, so we need to update it in the world. If you look, our world doesn't have an act method, so an act method is a really good way to update our world all the time. So we're going to add one quick. So we're going to move this very bottom curly brace down, and in here I'm going to add a public void called act. And if it's called act, it'll work all the time, just like it does in other methods. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually say scoreboard dot set text. That was a method that we made in the scoreboard class. I'm going to say it needs to say crabs, not crabs, worms plus, and then we're going to put a quote sign there, and then we're going to press plus, and then I need to write crab in capital because I'm using the crab class dot score, and that means that I can go and get the score integer out of the crab class. So I'm going to close that parenthesis, put a semicolon there, press compile, hope we made no errors, and now this should update all the time. When I eat a worm, it should go up to 1. So I press run, and you can see that my scoreboard is counting up and counting down. Now